Welcome to Soltron. This is the video review for my custom Don Onitaijin. Okay, so you can see right away that I modded his hips so he can actually sit down like his box art. So if you rotate him around, I don't actually have a throne for him to sit on. You can see his legs are bent at 90 degrees, his hips are about 90 degrees as well. So we can now pull off that sitting pose, which I think is very nice. So let's go ahead and straighten him out. And then you can see he's got these hip skirts, which are on ball joints, so they can move out of the way. So he can now get his full forward kick. So the articulation was there the whole time. It's just the skirts were in the way. And then his leg's kind of heavy, so these ratchets aren't really going to hold in place, but so I've got that all enabled. Alright, and one other thing that the mods I did to this guy enable is that now his little boosters on the back can actually face downward, which it's not much of a difference, but I think that looks cool, so it looks more like boosters because they're facing down. Usually these claws kind of like point up. So I think that's an improvement, that those face down. I think it integrates into his back better. And then one compromise I had to make is now that the Oni sisters' legs are just like hanging out the back here in a not very nice way. I could have probably designed these in a different way so they would fold up more snug against her thighs, but I didn't really think about that while I was modding. Okay, so now he can pull off poses where he has one leg like in front of the other leg. So he's got a little bit more dynamic looking now, so he doesn't just have to stand straight up. So I think that works out really nicely, that he can pull off some better action poses. He still doesn't have outward kick on his hips, so he's still a little bit limited by his poses. Maybe I'll work on replacing these joints with some strong ball joints in the future so he can get some outward kick and he can pull off some more natural looking poses, like wider poses. And then another thing I did, which you're probably only going to appreciate if you already own this figure, but there were some plastic spurs on these arms, on the gorilla arms, on the shoulders, which would make this whole area disengage when you move the shoulders up. So I just cut those off entirely. And now his shoulders can move up without having to move all this out of the way. So his shoulder pads, it no longer clashes with his shoulder pads when you rotate his arms. So that improves his articulation a little bit as well as playability. Okay, let's talk about the modifications I made to the individual figures. So now Momotaro here can rotate his arms because I added a joint, so his shoulders now have rotation. It's very squeaky. And then I also added a ball joint for the elbows, so now he can articulate his arm in a more correct way. This would be pretty useful if he had a sword, so he could do some more like slashing poses, but he doesn't really have a sword, so it's kind of arbitrary that he has these poses. But now he's got like a little bit more expression now that he can move his arms more freely. And then you can see there's the cut I made, and that's where I installed these ball joints. This one's nice and quiet so that these can rotate. So not too fancy there. And then of course, because of the hip skirts, he can also pull off like running poses or something, because he still doesn't have outward motion on these hips, so he still can't really get really dynamic poses, but it wouldn't be too hard to get that modded and then mod these into moving skirts as well. So maybe in the future that'll be something I work on with this guy. Okay, and what is this Kiji brother? I didn't do anything to this guy, so he's just standard. I don't remember the name of this one. Inu, maybe? So all I did was I modified the head articulation so now his head can telescope out a little bit, which I think makes him look a little bit more natural instead of having his head just jammed in this shoulder block. And now it's got a ball joint, so now his head can rotate, he can look up a little bit, he can look down a lot. So it gives him more natural poses and he can actually look to the side. So I think that's pretty nice. And then this one, what is he, Saru, is a monkey? I put a ball joint here, so now his head is no longer attached to this shoulder. You can see where I cut it off of the shoulder. So now he can actually move this shoulder without his whole entire head moving. So that's nice. He can still kind of stand upright too. So he can still pose pretty well. But that's the big move on him. And then when he transforms, this just rotates around and then his head goes here. And that means in robot mode, this arm can move without this shoulder head getting in the way. And then you can see the little bits of plastic I cut off were right here. So there used to be like little prominent, I don't know, there were like big tabs here. I don't know what the point was, but they would always collide with these legs in the back when you rotate. Now they don't collide. So that's the articulation on the monkey. So no big change for him, just head articulation. And then finally we get to the one who was the most work and the most irritating to work with. And then one thing I noticed on this figure, if you own it, is that her paint on her visor is really poor. The more you handle it, it's just going to chip right off. So I actually rubbed it with my nail a little bit and it just came right off. So you have to be very careful handling her head. So that's kind of annoying. But now she has articulation in the shoulder, so she can actually rotate her arm up, which is new. And then I just cut all the plastic that was in the way here, so now she can rotate her elbow a little bit too. So she's got a little bit of that articulation. She can get a little bit of outward motion on the arm as well to get them further from the sides. And then she has ball joint hips, so now she can kick her leg forward. She actually has, these legs were all joined with pieces of plastic, so they were all fused together, but now they're separated, so now she can actually move her legs and her knees. She has knee joints. So she can actually pull off some poses, kind of. She still needs this heel to support her from being too back heavy. And then another unnecessary thing I did is I cut open this entire foot so that this can just collapse inside. I think if you do that though, she's still too back heavy because of this big piece of junk right here. So she actually can still not stand up. She's just going to fall backwards. And then this doesn't really fold forward enough, or I guess it could be a third leg, but then it comes in between her legs very awkwardly. So in the future, I'll probably have to work out some kind of mechanism where this can slide, where her skirt maybe folds out a little bit and this slides under her skirt better, because this is just a real ugly eyesore. Like, they should have really found a better way to do this. This is just so horrible looking. Yeah, this just looks terrible, but maybe next time if I do some more mods with these figures, that'll be the next thing I work on. But she can actually move her legs now, so that's a big improvement. And her arms. And here's how the whole team looks with their new articulation. I think they turned out really well, especially the Oni sister. And I hope you enjoyed this video.